Top 10 Shocking Facts About World War II. World War II is often remembered through famous battles, legendary leaders, and stories of heroism. Yet behind the familiar history lie facts so astonishing that they still challenge our understanding of what humanity experienced between 1939 and 1945. The war reshaped borders, science, and society, but it also revealed extremes of cruelty, ingenuity, and sacrifice. Here are 10 of the most shocking realities of that global conflict. More than 70 million people died. Most were civilians. World War II was the deadliest event in human history. Historians estimate 70 to 85 million deaths, and nearly two-thirds were civilians rather than soldiers. Entire cities were erased by bombing, starvation, and genocide. The Soviet Union alone lost around 27 million people. These numbers are so vast that they are difficult to comprehend, equivalent to wiping out the population of a major modern country. 2. The war began earlier in Asia. Then in Europe, many people date the start of World War II to Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939. In Asia, however, the conflict had already been raging for years. Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931 and launched full-scale war against China in 1937. By the time Europe exploded into conflict, millions of Chinese civilians had already died, and atrocities such as the Nanjing massacre had taken place. 3. The Holocaust was industrialized murder. Nazi Germany did not simply persecute Jews and other minorities. It created an organized, bureaucratic system designed to kill on an industrial scale. 6 million Jews were murdered, along with millions of Roma, disabled people, Poles, Soviet prisoners, and others. Camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau used gas chambers disguised as showers and kept detailed records of arrivals and deaths, showing how coldly methodical the genocide became. 4. The Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were brief allies. One of the most surprising twists is that Hitler and Stalin initially cooperated. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939 divided Eastern Europe between them and allowed Germany to invade Poland without Soviet opposition. Only in 1941, when Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, did the two dictatorships become mortal enemies. The Eastern Front that followed became the bloodiest theater in history. 5. Children fought on every side. Tens of thousands of teenagers and even younger children served in uniform. Germany recruited the Hitler Youth as soldiers in the final years. In the Soviet Union, children acted as scouts and partisans. Japan trained schoolboys to defend the homeland with bamboo spears. Many lied about their age. Others had no choice as entire communities were drawn into total war. 6. The atomic bomb was not inevitable. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, killing over 200,000 people. What shocks many is how close history came to a different path. Some American scientists involved in the Manhattan Project later opposed using the bomb on cities and proposed a demonstration explosion instead. Japan was already seeking ways to end the war, but fears of a bloody invasion pushed leaders toward the nuclear option. 7. Animals played unexpected military roles. Beyond dogs and horses, the war used creatures in bizarre ways. The U.S. experimented with bat bombs carrying tiny incendiary devices to burn Japanese cities. The Soviets trained dogs to run under German tanks with explosives strapped to their backs. Britain even considered using pigeons to guide early missiles. These strange projects revealed the desperation to find any advantage. 8. Some soldiers never surrendered. Not everyone accepted that the war ended in 1945. Japanese officer Hiroo Onoda hid in the Philippine jungle until 1974, believing surrender messages were enemy tricks. Similar holdouts were found across the Pacific for decades. Their stories show how deeply wartime propaganda and loyalty shape minds. 9. Medical experiments created horrifying data. Nazi and Japanese researchers conducted brutal experiments on prisoners, freezing victims to study hypothermia, infecting them with diseases, and testing poison gas. After the war, some of this data was secretly used by Allied scientists because it was considered scientifically useful. raising painful ethical questions that still trouble medicine today. 10. World War II created the modern world. The conflict destroyed empires and gave birth to new superpowers. It led directly to the United Nations, the Cold War, the creation of Israel, and rapid advances in rocketry, computers, and medicine. Everyday technologies, from jet engines to antibiotics, spread because of wartime research. The map and politics of the 21st century are largely products of decisions made during those 6 terrible years. The first part revealed the enormous human cost and moral darkness of the war. Yet many other episodes, less famous but equally startling, shaped the outcome in ways most textbooks barely mention. This second part explores the secret technologies, forgotten heroes, and strange coincidences that helped decide the fate of the world. 11. A typo nearly changed the course of D-Day. Before the Allied invasion of Normandy in 1944, British crossword puzzles mysteriously contained secret code words such as Utah, Omaha, and Overlord. Intelligence officers feared a German spy ring had discovered the invasion plans. The truth was almost unbelievable. A school teacher who created the puzzles had heard the words from soldiers chatting nearby and used them by chance. One small coincidence nearly triggered a massive security panic only days before the largest invasion in history. 12. The real ghost army fooled Hitler. The United States created a top-secret unit officially called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, now known as the Ghost Army. Artists, actors, and sound engineers used inflatable rubber tanks, fake radio messages, and giant loudspeakers to imitate entire divisions. They deceived German commanders more than 20 times, saving thousands of lives. The unit's existence was kept secret until the 1990s. 13. The war accelerated women's rights overnight. With millions of men at the front, factories and offices depended on women. In the United States, the symbol of Rosie the Riveter represented 6 million new female workers. In the Soviet Union, women flew combat missions as the feared night witches. Although many were pushed out of jobs after 1945, the idea that women were incapable of industrial or military work was permanently shattered. 14. Britain prepared to fight from the underground. During the dark days of 1940, Britain expected a German invasion at any moment. The government secretly built a network of auxiliary units, civilian volunteers trained as guerrilla fighters who would operate from hidden bunkers if the country were occupied. Their life expectancy was estimated at only 2 weeks. Most families never knew these neighbors were prepared for suicide missions. 15. Japan and Germany never fully trusted each other. Although allies, the Axis powers often acted like rivals. They shared little military intelligence and even competed over territories. Germany refused to give Japan advanced radar technology, while Japan kept its code-breaking successes secret. This lack of cooperation shocked Allied planners after the war and likely weakened the Axis more than many battles did. 16. Penicillin saved more lives than any weapon. The first mass-produced antibiotic arrived just in time for World War II. Before penicillin, more soldiers died from infected wounds than from bullets. By 1944, Allied medics carried the drug onto battlefields, cutting death rates dramatically. Some historians argue that this medical breakthrough, not any single general, was the greatest lifesaver of the entire conflict. 17. The Nazis tried to build a sun gun. German engineers proposed placing a giant mirror in space to focus sunlight onto enemy cities, creating an artificial burning beam. The idea sounds like science fiction, yet serious studies were conducted by the SS. The project was impossible with 1940s technology, but it shows how far nations were willing to chase extreme superweapons. 18. Codebreakers shortened the war by years. At Britain's Bletchley Park, mathematicians, including Alan Turing, cracked the German Enigma cipher. Their work was so secret that even Allied generals were not told the source of the information. Modern historians believe code-breaking may have shortened the war in Europe by 2 to 4 years, potentially saving tens of millions of lives. 19. Many victims were never counted. The official statistics hide countless unrecorded tragedies: refugees who vanished on roads, prisoners buried in unmarked pits, and families erased without documents. In Eastern Europe especially, borders shifted so often that entire communities disappeared from maps. The true death toll will probably never be known. 20. Ordinary people performed extraordinary courage. For every dictator and general, there were thousands of unknown heroes. Villagers who hid Jewish families, sailors who rescued enemies from sinking ships, nurses who worked for days without sleep. These acts rarely appear in strategy books, yet they remind us that even in the worst moments, human compassion survived. World War II was not only a clash of armies but a laboratory of human behavior. It revealed how technology can be used for healing or destruction, how propaganda can twist ordinary citizens, and how fragile democracy can become under fear. The shocking facts of this era are not curiosities. They are lessons. As the world faces new conflicts and rising nationalism, remembering these stories is essential. The generation that lived through the war often said the same thing: never again. Whether that promise is kept depends on how honestly we continue to study what really happened. Secrets, myths, and legacies. Even after 80 years, World War II continues to surprise historians. Declassified files and survivor testimonies reveal episodes that sound unbelievable yet are completely true. This final part looks at the war's strangest mysteries and the long shadow it still casts over the modern world. 21. A single man delayed the Nazi nuclear program. German physicist Werner Heisenberg led Hitler's atomic research, but he never produced a working bomb. After the war, some colleagues claimed Heisenberg secretly slowed the project because he feared giving such a weapon to the Nazis. Others say he simply miscalculated key equations. Whatever the reason, his failure changed history. If Germany had succeeded first, the outcome of the war might have been terrifyingly different. 22. The largest tank battle in history lasted only days. The clash at Kursk in 1943 involved nearly 6,000 tanks and 2 million men. Entire fields shook like earthquakes as steel armies collided. Yet the decisive phase lasted less than a week. The battle destroyed Germany's ability to launch major offensives in the east and proved that the Red Army had learned to defeat the once invincible Wehrmacht. 23. Hollywood helped plan. Real military operations film directors, such as John Ford and Frank Capra, joined the U.S. military to create training movies and propaganda. Their storytelling skills were used to design deception campaigns and morale films shown to millions of soldiers. The line between cinema and warfare became so blurred that some battle footage was staged, while some staged scenes were later mistaken for real combat. 24. Millions of prisoners never came home. Soviet prisoners held by Germany suffered death rates above 50%. At the same time, German soldiers captured by the USSR often remained in labor camps until the 1950s. Families on both sides waited years for news that never arrived. The emotional aftermath lasted far longer than the shooting war. 25. The war created the first true computers. To crack codes and calculate artillery tables, engineers built machines like Colossus in Britain and ENIAC in America. These room-sized devices were the ancestors of every modern computer and smartphone. Few users today realize that the digital age was born directly from the urgency to win the war. 26. Some countries changed sides. Not every nation fought consistently for one camp. Italy surrendered in 1943 and then fought against Germany. Finland first battled the USSR alongside the Nazis, later turning against Berlin. These dramatic reversals show how survival, not ideology, often guided national decisions. 27. Weather forecasts decided invasions. The date of D-Day depended on a narrow window of tides and moonlight. Meteorologists predicted a brief break in storms for June 6, 1944. Without that forecast, the invasion might have been postponed for weeks, giving Germany time to strengthen defenses. A handful of weather experts quietly shaped the fate of Europe. 28. Art and treasures were systematically stolen. Nazi units known as the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg looted museums and private homes across Europe, stealing millions of paintings, sculptures, and books. Many masterpieces are still missing today. Special Allied teams called the Monuments Men raced behind the front lines to rescue cultural heritage from destruction. 29. The war redrew almost every border. Poland moved hundreds of kilometers west. Germany was split in two, Korea was divided, and dozens of colonies began the road to independence. Few conflicts in history have changed the map so dramatically. Millions woke up after 1945 to find they were living in a completely new country without ever moving house. 30. Peace did not arrive in 1945 for everyone. For much of Eastern Europe and Asia, fighting continued for years as civil wars and independence struggles erupted. The Cold War, born directly from World War II, threatened nuclear annihilation for decades. The official end of the war was only the beginning of a tense new era. The human side no one talks about. History books often focus on generals and battles, yet the war was lived by ordinary people facing impossible choices. This part looks at the personal, psychological, and social shocks that transformed everyday life between 1939 and 1945. 31. Entire cities learned to live underground. In London, Moscow, Berlin, and Tokyo, daily life moved beneath the streets. Subway tunnels became bedrooms, schools, and even wedding venues during air raids. Children grew up thinking sirens were normal. Some London families spent so many nights in the underground that they developed a unique tunnel culture with concerts, libraries, and medical clinics. 32. Food was as powerful as bullet. Starvation killed millions, especially in places like Leningrad, Greece, and Bengal. Governments used food as a weapon, blocking supplies to weaken enemies or control occupied populations. In Britain, rationing was so strict that people received only one egg per week. Yet the system actually improved national health by reducing sugar and fat consumption. 33. Love and marriage exploded. During the chaos facing uncertain futures, couples married after knowing each other for only days. In the United States, the marriage rate reached record levels in 1942 to 45. War brides crossed oceans to start new lives with foreign soldiers, creating multicultural families long before globalization became common. 34. Mental trauma was often ignored. What we now call PTSD was labeled battle fatigue or cowardice. Thousands of soldiers were punished instead of treated. Civilians who survived bombings experienced similar trauma but had no language to describe it. Only decades later did societies begin to understand the invisible wounds of the war. 35. Blackouts changed the night sky. To hide from enemy bombers, whole nations turned off their lights. For the first time in modern history, city residents could clearly see the Milky Way. Accidents increased, but so did a strange sense of unity. Neighbors guided each other through dark streets using painted curbs and small hand torches. 36. Propaganda reached into every home. Posters, radio dramas, and cartoons shaped how people thought about friends and enemies. Children collected scrap metal and learned songs praising leaders. Some propaganda was positive, encouraging recycling and unity, but much of it dehumanized opponents, making later reconciliation extremely difficult. 37. Pets became unexpected victims. At the start of the war in Britain, more than 700,000 pets were euthanized because owners feared they could not feed them during rationing. The decision, encouraged by authorities, later became one of the most regretted homefront actions and shows how panic can override compassion. 38. Fashion was dictated by military need. Silk went to parachutes, metal to tanks, leather to boots. Women painted fake seams on their legs when stockings disappeared. Men's suits lost cuffs and extra pockets to save fabric. Even wedding dresses were rented or made from recycled parachute silk. 39. Humor helped people survive. Despite fear, jokes flourished. Soldiers created cartoons about terrible food. Civilians laughed at absurd government rules. This dark humor was not disrespect. It was a psychological shield that allowed people to stay human in inhuman conditions. 40. The baby boom was a direct result. When peace finally arrived, millions rushed to build the families they had postponed. Between 1946 and 1950, birth rates soared across Europe, America, and Australia, creating the generation that would later shape rock music, civil rights, and the space race. Escapes, accidents, and miracles. Beyond the famous campaigns were moments so dramatic they seem invented. These episodes show how luck, courage, and simple mistakes often shaped history as much as grand strategy. 41. A Japanese diplomat saved thousands of Jews. In 1940, Japanese consul Chune Sugihara in Lithuania disobeyed his government and issued transit visas to Jewish refugees fleeing the Nazis. Working day and night, he wrote documents by hand until the moment his train departed. Around 6,000 people survived because of his decision. For decades, Japan barely acknowledged his actions. Today, he is honored as one of the righteous among the nations. 42. The Great Escape was real and tragic. In 1944, Allied prisoners tunneled out of Germany's Stalag Luft III camp using spoons, bedboards, and incredible organization. 76 men escaped, but most were recaptured, and 50 were executed on Hitler's orders. The event later inspired the famous film, yet the true story is far darker and shows how desperate prisoners were to keep resisting. 43. Friendly fire caused massive losses. Not all casualties came from the enemy. During the invasion of Sicily in 1943, nervous Allied anti-aircraft gunners shot at their own transport planes, killing more than 300 paratroopers in minutes. Similar tragedies happened at sea and in the air throughout the war, reminding us how confusion can be as deadly as any weapon. 44. A single torpedo changed Spain's future. In 1943, a British aircraft accidentally attacked a Spanish merchant ship carrying volunteers for Germany's Blue Division. Outrage in Spain weakened dictator Franco's enthusiasm for Hitler and helped keep Spain officially neutral. One mistaken strike quietly altered the politics of an entire nation. 45. Resistance fighters were teenagers. Across Europe, many underground networks were run by students barely out of school. In Warsaw, Paris, and Athens, teenagers carried messages, sabotaged railways, and guided downed pilots to safety. Their life expectancy was terrifyingly short, yet thousands volunteered knowing the risks. 46. The longest siege in modern history. The siege of Leningrad lasted 872 days. Citizens survived on glue, wallpaper paste, and bread mixed with sawdust. Over 1 million civilians died, yet the city never surrendered.